So we're seeing that Donald Trump continues to attract and command the attention of the world. And I think it's not a hyperbole to suggest that every word he says, and even in Malaysia, that everyone is paying deep attention because there's just so much impact. So Lara, we're here again.
Hello.
And I was just kind of, we say this a few times already. Pretty much 2024, we kind of devoted many episodes to talk about the re-election of Donald Trump, and finally it's 3 weeks into the administration. But you can really see there is an increased pickup of news, right? Even among the Malaysian media, Malaysians, opinion makers, politicians, they're starting to have a bit more guarded kind of response. And I think this is just the situation it is because, and I was reminded of what you said earlier. You say, the new administration felt like we didn't have an American president the last 4 years. And because, Joe Biden, regardless of what you want to believe, it increasingly seems like he was not there. And it was governed by a group of collective bureaucrats administration. It felt like that, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, totally. I guess a lot of things that are triggering people are actually the fact that there is Elon Musk and Dodge, and you can just see that AOC is like going berserk about this whole thing. And he said he's the most unintelligent billionaire that she has seen. But the fact is, he is the one that is founding Tesla. You have like SpaceX, all this thing, and the way that he runs X has proven to be a success. So I think that sort of credit is not given where it's due. So I think we are not used to give credit where credit is due. So I think that's a whole lot of that sort of baloney that we are coming to have to face that sort of reality, I think.
Yeah, and also it kind of pointed out, we talk about the administrative state, the deep state, they have their own culture, they have their own protocol. It's almost like, kita jaga kita, that kind of mentality, you cannot remove me. And really, if the last 4 years are governed by these people, then now you have a real president having real executive power. And that's one of the things that I really find very bizarre, right? People are like saying, Donald Trump, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. And even a lot of commentators from Malaysia, when in Malaysia, you probably have the most centralized government anywhere in the world. The Prime Minister office has so much power. I would say the president doesn't have as much power as our Prime Minister, with all the Ministry of Finance, everything combined together. So a lot of things that Donald Trump is doing actually enshrine in the Constitution, the executive power. And they have very clear separation of power. But anyway, what I want to talk about today is really the first 3 weeks, 21 days. I think Trump is fundamentally challenging and changing the global system for better or for the worse. So that's why we talk about a lot of news pick out, and whether you like him or you don't like him, you agree with him or not. The most recent thing, of course, the resettlement of Palestine in Gaza, which kind of, I find it interesting that it triggers a lot of people, but people are kind of like, okay, I'm not quite sure how we should respond. They're a bit scared of him. Do you get that kind of feeling?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's so interesting because, I mean, you were just talking about the part where he's kind of like going off script, and it's almost like there is certain unction and even just like a sense of common sense that is just suddenly he just thought about it and he put on that real estate mentality, and he basically the developer sort of mentality, and just say, why not we just develop this whole place? And it's so interesting because the whole White House press conference it's just mind-blowing. I mean,
the one with the Prime Minister,
exactly.
Israel one, yeah.
So it's just 30 minutes, but I totally recommend all our audience to like really just have a listen to it, and you'll begin to see how he's articulating really just basic common sense. And he's not even talking in a way that is like so like mockingly or anything. He's just basically just felt like there is a great whole lot of potential, and if he could just relocate all these Palestinians to places where people will take them in, I think, because they were not given the opportunity to leave Gaza at all. And I mean, given the state that they are in, yes, they did elected this Hamas into power, and yet, I mean, given the opportunity, I think most of them, they would want to leave and really just leave behind all this war terror zone that they are in. I mean, it's like if you're constantly worried about your safety day in, day night, I don't think people want to live in that state of life at all.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the Palestinian civilians were not allowed to live by Hamas. And they remain very useful human shield, put them in hospital, in schools and things like that. And, I know from Malaysian perspective, especially, there's a lot of negativity on the war. But most military experts were saying that Israel had exercised a lot of constraint. And by that, they can't use carpet bombing and things like that. They actually lost a lot of personnel there. That is one of the reasons why America is not committed to the same, because they are not willing to have people die. And if you don't want people to die there, you have to really use a more forceful kind of way. It basically bulldozes your way through the civilian population. So, yeah, I just felt like there's just such a strong political correctness spirit. And it's a bit like, I think about an example in Malaysia would be the third force. Every time people talk about third force and it's like cannot be done, you're going to dilute the, just think about 2014 general election, 2018 general election, Pakatan Rakyat and then Pakatan Harapan, their renamed coalition. They kept saying the third force is going to dilute us and things like that. But increasingly in Malaysia, we are kind of heading towards that kind of third force, or at least European style kind of alliance. I'm not sure. But it just felt like when you try to do the same thing over and over and over again, and I think that is all what Trump tried to do. Let's explore something. And our Prime Minister say he's going to meet Turkey President Erdogan next week, right? To formulate a response. Of course, our PMX has been very, very passionate about this. But at the end of the day, I think you have to ask the Palestinian, what do they want?
Exactly. Malaysia could be the heaven of receiving a few.
Yeah, actually, I personally don't think it's going to be a disaster if we take a few. But already you have heard some reports that Indonesia is willing to take more, of course, in exchange of some benefits. Obviously, if you want to take large amount of people, the financial aid will come and things like that. But now I want to talk about, Malaysian response, because, some of the issue we spoke a few times here, right? Tariff. In fact, one episode, we talk about, Trump calling it the most beautiful word. And then, of course, Gaza. And then recent big news is the pausing and stopping of foreign aid. And did you read that, even news agency like Politico, BBC were getting American funding? It's like, can you imagine if RTM gets funding? And BBC even came out and said, we're very disappointed, the funding. It's like, what the heck? You are a British media company and you want foreign aid? Isn't that interference? That's like so lack of objectivity.
Yeah, totally. I think it's interesting. I didn't know that. Even media will get like funding. From
Associated
all this.
Press also.
Exactly.
AP, NPR, lots on lots. There will be, starting to have articles coming out, but I think it goes way deep. You don't even know where it ends.
I think it's just so bizarre to think that there will be subsidy for all this very, very established media outlet, and then you treat it as like a humanitarian sort of aid. And I think it's just so crazy to think. If we compare like the sort of subsidy that is being given, it's literally a form of money laundering.
Yeah.
So if you think about that whole thing and you applied it in Malaysian context, and you have like subsidy that is given at like any sort of level, isn't that a different form of money laundering as well? I think it's just that our brains don't connect these two together on the same level. It's so when all these things are being exposed, it's just so interesting to see that, hey, the more the left is responding to this, then it means that the conservative and even like the liberal, the central right must be doing something that is like totally unconventional. So I think what Donald Trump is doing is that he's just putting in a lot of common sense, and he's doing it so out of the box, sort of unconventional thinking that the left literally couldn't catch up.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying, well, America is giving out soft power. Axios talk about that. But you see, the whole thing is these funds are not there to help America expand their power. It is used by the Democrats, by the left, given to, Politico, for example, wrote hundreds of articles against conservative using this kind of money. So it is hardly extending the influence of America. It is used to suppress political opponent. It is used for your own party activity. So it's a bit like in Malaysia. Can you imagine you use taxpayers' money for UMNO's activity? It's like Najib took YNDB money and he gave it to MP. He gave it to Shari. All those people. That's why at the beginning nobody say anything because everyone received some money. So it's that kind of explosion that, of course, the mainstream media being a direct participant, they're not going to admit that. But I want to look at one article today. It's not really an article, it's like an opinion piece, right? So this guy, a Malaysia Kini opinion writer, P. Gunasagaram, and of course he wrote, if you look at his history, he has been pretty much overt Trump hater. And in fact, one of the first readers' comment is, Guna, you have lost all objectivity. You are full of hate. And this guy was saying, I also don't support Donald Trump, but what you did was very unprofessional. But anyway, his title is called Fink, F-I-N-K. I actually had to literally go and search a dictionary to see what does it mean. Fink Trump and his fascist ways. So it's dated 28th of January 2028. So quite recent kind of thing. So by the way, Fink, the Oxford Dictionary defined it as unpleasant, contemptible. It's a very, very not nice kind of person. But anyway, just to sum up very quickly, and he said that, look, this guy is a very, very bad person, very bad bully because of three things he mentioned, okay? It is the three things which has been going on and on in American politics: illegal migrants, tariff, and also being a bad bully in general. But what I find interesting, and I think this is going to be the starting point of the discussion, is the reader's comment. Now, usually, of course, you shouldn't take reader's comment that seriously, right? Generally speaking, but I find it interesting and kind of illuminating. Now, I'm going to read this verbatim, okay? So the first one, quote, "You seem upset with Trump, who is keeping his promises to his voters." That's the first one that really caught my mind because we are at a stage, at least those of us who support Pakatan, of course, later on they become Unity, they become Madani. But the general feeling is that our Madani government is not keeping the promises, right? So many promises of reforms. Yeah, they, to be fair, they did certain things, okay? They're not totally useless. But quite disappointing so far.
Yeah, it is. So that's why I think it's just so refreshing to actually hear the phrase "promises made, promises kept."
Day one.
Yes, exactly. Saying every statement is so aligned, and the whole Trump administration, all the cabinet, they are so aligned that it's just so interesting to think about this whole thing, that you could have a party that is so aligned and so literally laser focused on finishing certain tasks, and that's it. No other agenda involved. I'm not trying to indoctrinate your children with leftist mindset where you are okay, you can be trans anytime. So it's just literally, hey, let's just get going, let's just get business done, and just let's have common sense restored.
And of course, one of the promises which just happened a couple of days ago, his campaign promises, of course, is he will not, basically the whole gender issue, the whole cultural war over male and female. The left just went overboard until I think even CNN showed today that so basically Trump issued an executive order to ban transgender athlete from competing in women's category because especially in college, one of the swimmer, Leah Thompson.
Thomas.
Thomas, is it? No, Thomas was his original name.
Yeah.
Then he became a she called Leah, and I think he was outside, not even a top 500 male swimmer, and then now he is the historical best NCAA swimmer. But anyway, these are just the kind of things. CNN, I think yesterday or the day before, showed that 73% of Americans are against transgender athletes competing in female especially. Whereas 5 years ago, it's only 60+%. So people are, they're not happy with this. But of course, Trump issued the order, and I think NCAA, which is the college administration of America, issued a statement and said they will comply. So transgender cannot compete in women category anymore. Of course, they will say, why don't you have a third category? But I wonder who even wants to watch, because a lot of sports is about funding and things. What if a lot of people want to watch trans versus trans? Then I think it's fair, right?
But I guess at the end of the day, we forgot the fact that sports are actually a form of entertainment.
Are you entertained?
Yeah, I mean like Gladiator. So basically it's a form of entertainment. So I mean you're not paying money to like watch certain indoctrination, like ideology being preached to you. So that's why I mean NBA rating has never been so low because they are like so preachy.
They have been, but of course, to their credit, they have been quiet. Especially since Trump returns, everyone is like just shut up.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And so another comment, very interesting, and I read quote in a Guna article. Okay, are you supporting Malaysian politicians who fail to keep most of their promises made during election?
Wow.
AKA some people, right? Then another one. One reason why Trump won big was because of his promise to get rid of illegal migration, which he proceeded to do on day one. Another one. Do not underestimate the 77 million Americans who voted for the man who cheated death not once but twice. There's a method to all his madness. I believe you are entitled to your opinion, but sit back and enjoy the ride because Trump world is newsworthy. That kind of sum up my feeling. I mean, not my personal feeling because we have been following Trump a lot, and even last week, of course, Chinese New Year break, don't have a lot of work. I literally spend 2 or 3 hours every day just to read the news because so many things are happening.
Yep.
For us, even with great interest, you have to put in a bit of effort just to keep up. But I felt like the last comment, Trump world is newsworthy, is something that everyone in Malaysia will have to start to understand because his policy, people talk about, it's Mexico, it's Canada, it's Panama, doesn't relate to us. No, it relates to us in major way. The sooner we understand that Trump is changing fundamentally how America is engaging in the world, the better it is for us. So that's why we kind of want to use this as a kind of foundation to discuss, right? Some of the topics, the three main topic that P. Gunasagaram kind of raised up: tariff, illegal migrants, bullying people. So among these three topics, which one kind of attract your attention the most? I mean, in general, these are all major promises he made. I mean, Trump made during his campaign. But which ones? Of course, we have a lot of other things like cultural.
I think one among the three, actually one of the most impressive one is actually the mass deportation of illegal migrants. And the fact that these countries where they came from are willingly just taking them back. But you're talking about, these are illegal migrants, like criminal level, those that are trying to just having mental health issue and things like that. I mean, you're not gonna
right?
Exactly. You're not gonna let these sort of people come into your country freely. That's it. So with all this thing, I think it's just so interesting that because he said, well, if you don't do it, I'm gonna just impose tariff on you and sanctions. Those sort of things that is so unthinkable, and yet he's just using that to leverage, and then you begin to see Canada cave in, Mexico cave in, and they begin to just secure the border. Because at the end of the day, it's all about securing the border. And if a nation can't be a sovereign nation if you don't have your borders secured. So I think that's just the basic concept of how a nation it is, as it is. So I think that's just something that is so foreign to us that we just felt hey, how about the moral? I think a lot of these things are really just bashing the whole idea of legislating morality. I think that whole concept has been on my mind the whole day. I was just thinking about why are we so fixated about Palestinian cause, or even some of these things hey, how about the rights of all these illegal migrants? Are they not people? Yes, they are people, but they are criminals as well. So I think Caroline Leavitt, she mentioned it so clearly. If they cross over the borders illegally, you are a criminal. There's just no other way of putting it. But you'd be but they are just here to get a better life. Yeah, but you should come through a proper channel. So I think that sort of common sense is hey, can you imagine one day you are putting maybe thousands of illegals that are crossing our border? I don't think our nation will be just sitting still doing nothing.
Yeah, today if you're in Malaysia without paper or you overstay And somehow, we always read news, right? Nightclub or whatever, there's some kind of, I don't know, some kind of operations. And if your papers are not in order, you are basically round up and you're going to be brought to the detention center and, basically waiting to be deported. No big drama, nobody is really against that. But how come when America is enforcing the border? Now, of course, to help people understand this is the Biden's administration purposely kind of allow people to come in because fundamentally they want to change the whole electoral constituent. I mean, these are the kind of people that is likely going to vote. And remember, this time Trump won the popular vote, but that is when you factor in California and New York, two of the biggest states with no voter ID. You see, when Florida did voter ID, I think 5 years ago, it has been super rare because all the illegals will not risk deportation. So this is just common sense. It's like, do you want like a few million foreigner coming and change your right? Can you imagine? I don't know, it could be from Myanmar, from Bangladesh. I mean, we don't want to mention specific nation, but if they come and fundamentally change your vote and suddenly whatever race you are, you have no more say. I mean, it is that kind of example, and I'm just not quite sure why Malaysian cannot get it.
Well, I guess fundamentally, these people are like more globalists. I think they genuinely do want to have like more power, but at the expense of the people. I mean, even with what is happening in Israel as well. I mean, you're talking about like an all left that is like going against Bibi Netanyahu, and they are like literally just trying to like out him and basically just trying to like change even the whole voter demographic and like trying to get like more Arab population that is able to vote more. And you compare, I mean, you're talking about a state where you have most of them Jewish population. And why do you want to change like fundamentally like having certain people that has more voter right and things like that? So, I mean, when you do that sort of delineation, I think there's like a permanent damage to the whole voting system of the nation. So I think that is also what is happening in Malaysia as well. When you have like certain delineation of the certain zoning and you have like urban, rural votes, I think all these things, we're already suffering that sort of effect. So I think Malaysian, of all the people in the world, we should understand this concept way better. And yet we are like just constantly just buying into all this like BS of the politician.
And all these are really, pre-World War II divide and conquer. I mean, of course, British did that a lot. And I mean, you see that. I mean, you mentioned example, urban, rural divide. But of course, sometimes you just have unintended consequences like Undi 18. I think nobody really could anticipate the initial, I mean, of course, with the green wave and things like that. We're not sure what is the long-term effect, but it was unexpected because people would have thought, hey, the young voter usually trend towards the liberal, the more, but it didn't translate that, especially in the northeast region of Peninsula. But I mean, migration, we have talked about it many, many times, and just contrasting, I mean, one very quick point, Angela Merkel, of course, the previous chancellor of Germany. Now, Germany, they try to come and vote, maybe to restrict migration, that vote failed.
Yeah.
Because you see, the thing is when you accept more and more people, remember during the Arab Spring, German was like, hey, everyone come. Afghanistan, hey, everyone come. Palestine, hey, everyone come. Syrian, hey, everyone come. And they're not just illegal. A lot of them actually somehow could become citizens. So when you have more and more these people who may not necessarily share the same value as you, eventually your nation will be destroyed. And that's one of the arguments that Trump presented, and the voters supported him. But Angela Merkel, I think just 2 days ago, still doubled down on open border and things like that. And German is like, ever since they did a few stupid things like, end nuclear end nuclear energy, now they're dependent on Russia, open border. I'm not sure, can it even survive? But the good news is many nations in Europe are waking up. Italy is closing out the border. You look at Netherlands, you look at Sweden, Liberal Prime Minister is saying that we need to stop migration. France. So it's going to be one of the great battles, but honestly, I'm not sure how Europe, of course, that's another topic, UK is also facing a huge problem, right? In fact, one of the Labour member of parliament was imploring Prime Minister to do something, otherwise they might be wiped out by the Reform Party, who is really anti. Actually, it's not anti-migration, right? It's anti-illegal migration. But of course, Europe, they kind of make the illegal legal. But that's migration is always very interesting because even in Trump's first term, remember when he kind of said, certain people from certain country cannot come to US, kind of trigger a lot of people, including politicians in Malaysia. Oh, by the way, did you hear that he was kind of directing the Secretary of Homeland and Security, Christine Norm, right, and say that any athlete transgender wants to come in to compete, do not give visa to them. And they will be like, and remember the next Olympic is in LA. So he kind of hinted inside, well, I'm sure the Olympic Committee will do the right thing. So it kind of like threatening.
Yeah, I mean, he'll even issue out the executive order against the ICC.
Yeah, because they start the indictment against Netanyahu and other people. So even some countries like Australia and Canada are stupidly saying that if Netanyahu step on their land, they will arrest him. So I'm just thinking, I wanted to read the exact EO. If you sanctioned ICC, does that mean that if Canada and Australia comply, then you are breaching the sanction? I'm just thinking, is it broad enough like that? Because the last time he did the sanction, ICC dropped the indictment. So I think it's also a warning shot to all these so-called Western nation. Don't be stupid, Just use a bit of your brain. And in the EO, he laid down the thing. He said, look, Israel and US, they are not they are not parties to the treaty that ratify ICC. They don't recognize ICC authority. You have no right. So anyway, that's a side point. And since we're at this, I think the next natural point to go through is Gunasagaram's allegation that Trump is a bully.
Yeah.
And I kind of, during Chinese New Year Day 1, I was at my auntie's place, right? So a few of my cousins, I just go to people's house and the first thing, they don't really think that they're putting the Chinese media, that CCTV, those channels. And you're just going to hear a lot of propaganda and things like that. So I just happened to see the news about, I think they were talking about Greenland, So I think, so my cousin is using the Chinese word. I say, oh, this new president wants to rampas Greenland, that kind of thing. Then I was talking to Lan Xie. Lan Xie is like, actually, he may not want to rampas, but it's not like steal or anything. He wants to buy. And America has history of buying. They bought Louisiana, they bought, California they didn't buy, they kind of compelled them to join. They bought Alaska. So they have this history. It's like willing buyer, willing seller, right?
Yeah.
So he's not even saying I'm sending troops or things like that. Even Panama, actually, the whole thing about Panama was there was a treaty. And I think when Rubio went to Panama, he said in a very clear term to Panama president is that we believe you have broken the treaty. And we believe that if you don't ratify, we have the right to seize the canal. Now, whether that can pass international tests or whatever is a separate issue. But it's like letter of demand, right? You can say whatever you want in letter of demand.
Exactly.
You do a lot of this kind of legal things. So whether true or not, whether exaggerated or not, that's irrelevant. It's almost like a negotiation tactic. But anyway, let's talk about bullies. So what's your take? How would you... of course, we are so kind of, we understand how Trump rules work, but to a person generally, I think it is fair to say the majority of people in the earth right now felt like Trump is a bully because he's using his power. But how would you explain to people, what he's doing? Not saying you must defend him or whatever, no, but just say, look, how do you, kind of present the kind of argument to give a fair perspective of what he's trying to do?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you must think from how he is thinking. As in, first and foremost, he is always pro-American. Everything is about America first. So I think it's not wrong for a politician, like a president, to put the interests of his people and his nation first. before your other nation. I think it's just common sense. And
It is common sense, right?
yeah, I mean, like, so that's why I think a lot of like a bit of frustration with our prime minister here in Malaysia is that too much attention is focused elsewhere than Malaysia. So I think there's a lot of that sort of comments. So I think at the end of the day, it's not about your standard of morality. It's not even about that humanitarian. It's really about how are you taking care of the welfare of your people. So I think what Donald Trump is doing is just literally that. I think so that's why that sort of strong and firm position against other nation where he's like he's just basically using leverage. Because at the end of the day, you have to come to the table where you bring the other party to the table with negotiation. If you don't have any power, who's going to come to the table to talk to you?
Yep.
So I think that's just like basic business tactics that people need to like think about. And then what he's doing is just like being a businessman. Hey, let's talk. Let's have like a gentleman's talk. So, I mean, he even talked about the whole Iranian sort of concept. He said he didn't like doing it, like the sanction. He didn't like imposing it on the sanction on Iran in his first term. Neither does he like to do it now. I think it was just so mind blowing that when I heard him saying it like so genuinely, and he was just saying that no, I didn't like to do it, but provided they are not like trying to like, hey, you're not trying to like just annihilate the whole nation, your neighboring nation. Your whole goal is just to about like imposing terror on another nation. So you're basically causing a lot of instability to Middle East. So I think what he's trying to do is that, hey, if Iran could show that they are just they're gonna like comply and they're gonna like just not have like nuclear power, then we have a talk. So I think it's just really that. So I don't see that being a bully when you, because if you really hear him speaking how he's like elaborating all this thing, and he just genuinely think that there's so much potential even in Iran. I mean, just with the current regime, I think it's not going to work and things like that. If people would just care to listen to all these things and like begin just to just kind of like put a bit of common sense to it, and you begin to, because what Gunasaram is saying here is that it's so interesting, because Gunasaram says that history is littered with those leaders who hinder real progress, and Trump is one of them. And Trump, on the other hand, is saying that we shouldn't allow history to repeat itself. You study history, you have decades of like useless strategies and what is happening in
Gaza
there.
is the best example.
Exactly. And he said, well, Americans are not free from it also. I mean, Americans also play a huge part in like basically
he wants to
causing
change
a lot.
that, you know.
Yeah, so he said we could have like peace for a much longer term than ever. So all he wanted was just peace. So I think when you impose that sort of peace strategy and you put it like well-written way, I don't see it as a bully. I think a lot of people just sort of like, you can't get past your emotion. I think we just need to get beyond ourselves and like just put our emotions aside, and like a lot of these wise readers are just telling Guna to like, hey, like just
I mean, look at the comments. It's just
exactly.
like shoot bad. And of course, another example which we are not getting deep today is the Ukraine war, you know. And you remember towards the end of the election campaign, there was, you know, Blinken was there, you know, just trying to stir the whole thing. And people are talking about World War III and things like that. But right now, there's already some draft proposal of peace. You know, the timeline will be end of the month. There should be conference call. You know, there will be ceasefire and things like that. And Putin said, "I will listen." Zelensky said, "I will listen." Of course, whether a deal or not is not important at this stage. But it is that parties are willing to consider settlement. And the other thing, of course, just follow on what you have been saying, is the world has been freeloading on America. And this is something that I think a lot of people fail to see. It's like, since when is the responsibility of America to help the whole world? Yeah, I mean, at the end of the World War II, they were one of the few nations. They were quite scarce, and they were helping, but you cannot help people forever, right? It's like if you see someone and you're like, okay, I'll help you, give you some clothes, some food, I help you find a place to stay, I help you pay a bill. Even parents, right, when they want to help the children, a lot of time, they'll be like, okay, we'll give you a bit of financial support, pay the deposit, but you have to pay your own, you know, mortgage. You cannot expect your parents to pay your bank installment, right? But now it's like everyone is expecting, America to fund. You look at USAID, billions of dollars, everyone is getting a piece. You look at NATO, nobody is paying anything. It's like Trump is just basically saying, enough is enough. And I think critical spectator, the Polish guy who is in Singapore, he made a very interesting. He has a few Facebook articles, but this is just his summary. So I quote, that's why it's quite funny when people accuse Trump of being unfair. It is in context of tariff to friends and allies, but these friends have been leeching on USA for decades. So talking about Canada doesn't pay NATO, Mexico doesn't guard the border. Just a few examples. But anyway, so let's kind of wrap up, right? Because so many things we're not even on day 21, right? And there's really a huge paradigm shift. And in fact, next week, NATO is having their security meeting. And in fact, they have a working group, can you imagine defense or Ukraine have a working group? It sounds like one of your project kind of committee, right?
Yeah.
And Head said at a press conference today, just say America will withdraw from the working group. Basically, you're on your own. And then, of course, everyone, they kind of, Trump kind of threatened, but people didn't think he would do it. But he's doing it, And whatever plan in Ukraine, they talk about 10 years, they need 500 billion or whatever. US is going to be like, yeah, I'll contribute a bit, but it's Europe, man. It's your problem. It's your baby, not my business. He's really going to do it. So let's talk about paradigm shift, and we kind of end with this already. How do you think people should adjust to this? Because now let me begin with my prediction, okay? I really believe in 6 to 7 months' time, the world will see that there is so much common sense in Trump's approach that many will come along it and say, hey, why are we fighting Ukraine war? Why are we having these kind of things when there's a better way? It's not as if he doesn't have track record. Abraham Accord proven that he could create something different. Abraham Accord really caught everyone by surprise.
Yeah, if he had a bit more time, given another 5-6 months, exactly.
Yeah, that is probably the reason why Hamas started what they started. But anyway, paradigm. So what are some of the things you think? Of course, we already talk about one, which is politicians fulfilling their promises. And that's really the major point for me, because you look at Malaysia. Yeah, the only reason Bandani is still somewhat not in danger is because the alternative is equally crap for now. But it won't be crap forever. At some point, there will be credible replacement. And I just want to say to the government that you shouldn't take the voters for granted all the time, because PMS especially, you don't want to become the rhino, right? In US they have this term Republican in name only. We don't want PMS to be reformer in name only.
Exactly.
It's increasingly closer to that. So that's really my take. But what about you? What are some of the paradigm shifts you think people should and maybe even embrace?
Well, I think, I guess it's like there is a huge separation between the people as well as those Hollywood stars, where you begin to see that a lot of Hollywood stars, like a lot of their children are like trans and things like that. They are like just advocating for this. And yet, one of the paradigm that we must begin to think is that we're not discriminating these people. We are just basically saying that, hey, there's only just two gender, that's it. All this world history, medical, everything about common sense is basically there's only just two genders. So I think if people will even just begin with that basic, simple truth, they can and not allow their emotions to get ahead of them, I think they can really, really just come to that place of, hey, having their common sense being redeemed again.
Which reminds me, I think just one day ago, J.K. Rowling kind of tweeted, and when Trump was signing the EO and all the female athletes were surrounding him, what a great picture, right? And I quote, "Congratulations to every single person on the left who has been campaigning to destroy women and girls' rights." See, the whole thing about trans is even the gay and lesbian are against trans, because you are destroying our hard-fought right. And he said, without you, there will be no images like this. I don't think Rowling is a supporter of Trump, but she was very vocal against trans. So much so that even the Harry Potter stars were against her, right? Because
Yep.
of so much political correctness spirit. And your point is exactly right. You see, it's nothing against them, but you see, the whole thing about trans is if you don't support children doing transitions, we will silence you. So this is the thing. They started the war, and that's why 73% Americans say, basically, go to hell.
Yeah, and another paradigm is really just to think about like the opposing views, and you can agree to disagree. I think that's just a whole lot of sense to this phrase, agree to disagree. I think we have been too entitled to just like, hey, I can only have my view. That's it. I mean, if you don't take my view, then you're a bigot, you're a racist. So I think people are like just so the word racist is like just so easily thrown. I mean, ever since like BLM, like critical race theory, those sort of things. And so if people would just come to that place of like, okay, let's have a healthy debate, healthy discussion, and okay, we can just leave it as it is and maybe revisit the topic again. And if you would just come to that place and just allow your emotions to be like a bit more still, I think you can begin to have like a bit more common sense restored.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that because suddenly I was reminded, like Guna in his article, I think one of the reader commented, you have thrown like, 10 to 12 very, very vulgar, personal attack word on him. I don't even want to mention all those things. It clearly shows that you lack the objectivity and you are too emotional. So it's exactly, I think the article really demonstrated what you say. When the left cannot agree, they'll call you this and that. And we have the same version here, right? I mean, we have the religious, racial superstructure that, of course, in Malaysia, so many things, right? Now with Thai Pusan coming, suddenly some minister in Prime Minister department say, well, there's a guideline on how other non-Muslim people, if they have an event, how you should behave. I mean, Prime Minister is meeting all these Hindu worshipper right now, right? And that's why we say even previously Argon wanted to go. I mean, does Argon need to follow your guideline? So these are the kind of things, we have our own version of political correctness spirit. But I think, time is kind of running out. But I just want to end with this. I feel like Trump presents a prototype of what you can do to deal with just unreasonable things. You just imagine the things the conservative and him had gone through the last 4 years. And that's why coming into 21 days, everyone is surprised by the speed. And, remember Rahim Kassan of the National Pulse, he is, of course, a super MAGA person, but he's always very cautious, ever pessimistic, right? And I think we're going to end with this, right? He say, and I quote, he said, perhaps you'll be more surprised to find that I am indeed in this moment perfectly content with the rapid clip of which Trump and his team are advancing his pledge, promise, and get it done agenda. It's an exciting time in America. Make sure to drink it. Also, even he felt like, well, what Trump has done exceeded his expectation. So it has been 20 days only, but I think next week when we come back, let's kind of focus a bit on PMX because he might be back from Turkey already. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe.
But I'm interested to hear what you had to say. But I seriously, they will always talk about two-state solution. But you see, a lot of people don't even see that we have two-state solution for 20 years already, ever since Israel withdrew from Gaza. When my friend went to Israel in 2017, he stayed in Gaza. He said it's full of 4-star, 5-star hotel. They received the greatest financial aid ever of any nation. But now we know more than half of those financial aid are used to build underground tunnel, missiles, and things like that. So, yeah, we have two-state solution. It doesn't work. But anyway, many paradigm shifts to come in 2025. If any of the topic, I know maybe this discussion may be a bit advanced for some people and things like that, but I really want to encourage everyone to just be a bit patient, and eventually you will see the logicalness, such word, right? But you know what I mean, right?
Yep.
Or what Trump is doing, and hopefully there will be some government people, politician, political party in Malaysia that is willing to say, look, I'm going to fulfill what I promised. I hope to see that day soon in Malaysia.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we have talked enough. So until next time, bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.